to this Standing Committee Education briefing. My name is Lorraine Botha and I'm the chairperson of this committee. I'm going to ask members to please introduce themselves, and then I'm going to ask the Department of Education to please introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ricardo Mackenzie.
Good afternoon, everybody. Member Khalil Brankais.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Member Khalid Sayed.
Member Allen, have we lost you?
Good afternoon, everybody. Member Christians.
I think we have lost Member Allen. We'll come back to him if he has joined.
Good morning, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair. I am
SG?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't hear anything.
Sorry. Introductions, SG?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members. I'm Brian Schroeder, Head of Education, as you know. I'm going to give my colleagues an opportunity to introduce themselves. Let's start with Wanda, please, who's doing the presentation.
Ms. Conrad?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. My name is Wanda Conrad. I think you do know by now that I'm the Director Business Strategy and Stakeholder Management, responsible for non-financial performance indicator reporting, both quarterly and annual, and I'll be doing the presentation to you today on behalf of the department. And I will be supported by my SG.
Thank you.
Archie?
Good day, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Archie Lewis, Deputy Director General for Institution Development and Coordination. Thank you.
Thanks, Archie. Sali?
Good afternoon, honourable members and colleagues. Sali Abrams, DDG Education Planning within the WCED.
Peter?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, honourable members and colleagues. My name is Peter Beets. I'm Deputy Director General for Curriculum and Assessment Management.
My gee my class sommer 'n bietjie bevordering. That's very good. I like that. Chair, that is everyone. I think that is on from my side.
Thank you very much, SG. And I want to recognize and welcome our very capable procedural officer, Wasima Hassan Musa. Thank you very much for all the logistics in regard to making the standing committee meeting happen. I also wish to welcome everybody who is tuned in via YouTube, as well as the media who is listening in and listening in on our meeting. Thank you very much. Be welcomed. I have received no apologies. I'm not sure, members, whether you have any apologies for any colleagues. None?
Sorry, Chair, can I just interject? Member Bosman's just struggling to join in, but he'll join in shortly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Member Bosman will join us then. Thank you. Just members, in terms of our engagement today with the department, as you are aware, the department is briefing us on the quarterly performance reports, and it is for July, September, October, December, and January, March. So it's 3 quarterly reports that we will be briefed on in the standing committee meeting. I just want to indicate, members, that please keep your and the department in this instance, please keep all your mics muted as well as your video camera function as far as you can. But I want to urge those who are doing the presentation or who are speaking, when it is your turn, you may, if you wish to, turn on your video camera and your mic. So your video camera is optional if you want to turn it on when it is your time to speak or you are responding to a question. Please feel free to do that. Then members, there is a hand function, and I see Member Mackenzie has indicated. Member Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, just for the committee's information, I will leave the meeting just before 2 because there's a division of revenue presentation at 2 in the NCOP where I'll be representing the Western Cape Parliament. But I did WhatsApp you my comments on regards to the oversight visits to schools in the Metro.
Thank you very much, Member Mackenzie. We will get to that. I will take your note when we get to that. Please just lower your hand. I want to say, members and department, there is a hand raise function or raise your hand function. It is between those 3 little dots on your taskbar and the conversation function, the chat function. And then so if you want to pose a question, please use the raise your hand function. If not, just type in the chat bar, then I will see your message if you do not have that. And so that's the way you are going to identify yourselves. And then in terms of raising a point of order, please use the meeting chat function to raise your point of order, and then we will take it then accordingly. I just need to indicate that notice is taken, SGE, that we have received the presentation yesterday. I'm not going to debate upon it now. I'm just bringing it to the attention that we have received it late, and we have received an updated version today just before the we embarked on starting this standing committee meeting. So I'm just putting that out there. As I indicate, I'm not going to debate about it. I'm just giving it for information. With that said, I want to then give over to Ms. Conrad. SG, is the opening remarks before Ms. Conrad starts with the presentation?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, indeed. Just to say our apologies for the slightly late receipt of the presentation. You can understand it's been a little bit of a hectic time, as you would understand. The adjustments to the presentation which will be made today are minimal. They're really just clarification of issues that make it a little bit easier. There's no problem with the original presentation. It's just that it augments it a little bit for last minute. I'm going to, without further ado, ask Ms. Conrad to do the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thanks, SG. Yes, my apology. I have updated the presentation slightly just to make the reading easier. The original presentation contains all of the information in a lot of detail, and I thought a few overarching slides would better serve the purposes of today. So just to give you some context and by way of introduction, I just need to clarify, Chair, can everybody see the presentation that's up?
Yes, ma'am, we all can see it. Thank you.
So from Q2 to Q4, bearing in mind that Q4 will be preliminary figures. It will be validated during the course of the next month or two, given the impact that COVID has had on our ability to gather information from schools and other service providers. So the figures that I'm going to give you in the Q4 are the non-validated figures at this stage. Just to help and to give you some context, the WCED currently in the 2019-20 reporting period has 74 non-financial performance indicators. 18 of them are strategic objective indicators. 43 of them are PPMs. PPMs, Chair, are sector or national performance indicators. That's usually set by the entire sector, and it's based on the medium-term strategic framework. There are 13 indicators that are province-specific, and they are referred to normally as PPIs. Out of all of that, there are 7 indicators that are quarterly indicators or quarterly targets as per the sector requirement. The rest are all annual targets. Within the quarterly targets, in Program 1, which is administration, there are 4 indicators. In Program 2, which is public ordinary schools, there's 1. In Program 3, which is independent school subsidies, there's 1. Program 4, public special schools, there's 1. The other programs, all of the indicators within the other programs, which is Program 5, Program 6, and Program 7, are all annual indicators. Then just to give you an idea, all of this information is also on the other slides that you've got, that goes quarter to quarter, and it's sitting within the quarterly performance report for quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4, but it's a little bit small, so I just extracted it just to show you in a one slider what's going on across all of those slides. So Program 1, administration. The first indicator is the number of public schools that use the Provincial School Administration and Management System, which is our CMIS system. Our target was 1,510 schools, and across the quarters, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4, this target has been achieved. PPM, which is the sector indicator, 102, number of public schools that can be contacted electronically, so in other words, via email. Our target was 1,510, and across quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4, this was achieved, and in some instances, both of these indicators were exceeded. PPM 104, which was the percentage of schools visited at least twice by district officials for monitoring and support purposes. The target was 100%, and this was achieved across quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. These school visits refer to visits by district officials, including circuit managers and other officials, for either monitoring or support purposes. Usually what happens is they will go into the school and they will sign in the official visitor's book, and there is a report uploaded onto DMIS, which is the district management and monitoring system. Then the last PPM is PPM 108, teacher absenteeism rate. The target was 3%. In quarter 2, 3.92% of teachers were absent. In quarter 3, 3.97% of teachers were absent. And in quarter 4, you'll see I put a percentage there, Chair, mainly because that is the unvalidated figure. So what's happening across the schools at the moment is all of the absenteeism, all of the leave forms, all of whatever forms it is that they've got is being sent off back up via district to head office, and that information will be captured so that we can get a validated figure in time for our annual reporting. Then in Program 2, which is public ordinary schools, learner absenteeism rate, you'll see, Chair, that it is a PPI. It used to be a sector indicator, and DBE has removed it from sector indicators and says it's a statistical indicator, largely because learner absenteeism, you can't actually put a target in for things that are behavior determined by learner behavior or person behavior. The province has decided to maintain learner absenteeism as a provincial indicator because we are working exceptionally hard to improve the systems to manage and monitor absenteeism and also to reduce the rate of absenteeism in the province. The target was 6.5%. That is an annual target and a target per quarter. Quarter 2, 8.36%, quarter 3, 9.36%, and quarter 4, unvalidated at this stage, 9.33%. You'll see that there's been an increase in the figure, largely because of an improvement in the systems that we are running at school level and an improvement in monitoring of those systems as well. Then program 3, independent school subsidies, PPM 303, the percentage of registered independent schools visited for monitoring and support. In quarter 2, our target was 21%. We achieved 16%, and that was as a consequence of an official from that directorate being seconded to another. In quarter 3, the target was 22%, and this was achieved, 40% was achieved, and that was as a consequence of an official from Metro East joining that directorate. And in quarter 4, target was 26%, and they achieved 30.7%. In program 4, which is public special school education, PPM 403 is the number of therapists or specialist staff in special schools. In quarter 2, the target was 295. We achieved 299 because officials were employed. There was provision made for the additional employment of officials. In quarter 3, you'll see there was a drop of 1, and that was as a result of the retirement. In quarter 4, the target of 295 was achieved. 301 officials, and that was as a consequence again of the additional employment opportunities for therapists and specialists. What you're seeing now is our overall, this is the overall achievement. If you will, you'll see that 4 targets were achieved, 3 were partially achieved, and this goes quarter to quarter. So in quarter 2, there was partially achieved. But as you can see in the final, which was these over here, within those you will see achieved, achieved, achieved. In the end, you will find that there's a balance by the end of the year of whether you've achieved or whether you've partially achieved. So sometimes you might be 1 short. So for example, if it's 295 and you've got 294, then it will be considered partially achieved. Or in actual fact, it's often described as either achieved or not achieved. And in that instance, even though you 1 indicator, 1 figure, or 1 person has retired, in the bigger scheme of things, it would be considered not achieved. Chair, so we have basically the same kind of issues across the system as you were aware, the same kind of challenges, when it comes to achievement of targets, particularly in the absenteeism space. You'll see, if you don't mind, I'm just going to take you back up to the learner absenteeism. You'll see what has happened across these quarters over here. The impact of social unrest on the quarter 2 and quarter 3 is quite significant. But at the same time, it must be balanced in our consideration of these figures. It must be balanced, counterbalanced with the concerted effort that the department has made based on the decision to tighten monitoring of learner absenteeism at school level and to tighten our expectation around the systems that schools have in place currently. Chair, the rest of the slides are all of the details. This robot table, you'll see there's a robot table for each quarter. And this we get from the Department of the Premier. And what we do is we provide them with our report, and they provide us with the progress analysis of it. So you'll see there's one of these for every single quarter. I'm not going to belabor any information in there. It's really just for information's sake. There's a lot of detail going on, but that is why I actually created the summary, because it just makes it easier to read that. Then inside your quarterly performance report is a lot of detail, and you'll see across Chair, you'll see all the reasons for deviation in Q2, and there you'll see the greens and the oranges for partially achieved and so on. So the detail sits there, and this is the report that we would normally present to the audit committee, and we present this to the SG as well. The detail for deviation sits in here as well. And just as an example, you'll see in Program 2 independent school subsidies where you had 16% achievement, and it would have gone in there, as I mentioned, one staff member was seconded to another project in the department. And the same goes across each of the other quarters as well. And that's the same image that you saw previously, as would that be the same kind of detail in the Q4 with all of the detail sitting in there. Q4 is exactly the same with the robot table and the detail. Chair, I think the reason I provided the summaries is it takes all of the rest of that and it's pulled it into these high level, if you will, one glance, program by program. What's your indicator? What was your target? And what did you achieve? Those are the targets, Chair, and that is the information quarter to quarter. I think at this stage, the high level information that I've provided across the programs with the quarterly indicators here, that should be sufficient, and I'm happy to respond to any questions based on the presentation that I've just made, unless you want me to go into the detail of it. That sits in those kinds of reports. Chair, I think I'll take your guidance on this, but I'm happy with that because I've pulled, as I said right at the beginning, I've pulled all of that information and put it into the summary slides. It just makes it easier to understand and to deal with. I'm happy to stop there, Chair, and if my SG wants to direct me further, maybe he wants me to go into more detail, but I'm open to questions at this stage.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Conrad. I think that you can provide the detail in the questions asked if we have agreement on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you can do it there. Then I just want to, at this point in time, say thank you for the presentation, and then just welcome Member Bosman, who has joined the meeting. Member Bosman, welcome. And then an apology to Mr. Ben Daza. I omitted to introduce you. Mr. Ben Daza is our Senior Procedural Officer. My apologies, Mr. Daza, and please be welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, that is the presentation. I'm going to take your questions. I note immediately Member Christians. I'm going to take around. Is it only him? And Honorable Sayed. That is the two that I'm taking in that order. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I know it's extremely difficult with everything happening, and I think we're all grateful for the department giving all the information. I just and I'm not going to go into much detail. What I just wanted to know is the one thing that says the risks and challenges, because we're very aware of the risks and challenges that our teachers and even learners are facing. And I just want to take us back again to the Mossel Bay story, Hillcrest School. If there's any community unrest or service delivery protest, half of the school is empty because half of the school comes from one particular point. So it's always going to affect your figures when it comes to the learners being absent or even teachers being absent. I think the place that they referred us to was the Asla area. So you always have that problem. So I know it's not a schooling problem, an educational problem, but you're going to sit with that problem because in certain communities, when there's unrest, our learners cannot get to school. And the other thing that they've also mentioned at that school is when it rains, Winter months, you'll have bad attendance because it rains. So I don't know, and we spoke about transport from that area, but maybe we can just see what's happening. That is a classic example of a very big problem that we have. And then just the other question also that Ms. Conrad has mentioned, that the figures of the public ordinary schools of learners being absent is also now because of a large increase importance of monitoring. Are they at the standard now that they are monitoring accurately, because we want our learners and our teachers to be at school, and also to fix the pass rate, to fix the quality. So I'm referring to this because at the end of the year we criticize because we say the Western Cape went down in their pass rate and all of those things, but we must look at is there something that we can do sooner in order to look at that pass rate, to look at the quality pass rate. So Chair, I'm just going to park it there for the meantime. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member Christians. Member Syed.
Chair, thank you very much, and thank you to the department for the comprehensive presentation. I know the department is under quite a bit of strain currently, so we want to thank the department for the presentation and for the work done towards it. On slide number 3, Chair, I just wanted to get a sense as to how did each of the listed key risks basically have an impact on the department's performance, and what mitigation measures were put in place to address them. Then flowing from there, what is the percentage of the department's budget that is spent on school safety? I ask that given what we have now seen recently during the lockdown, and given that it is a key risk that the department states there, is the department likely to change? Yeah, so that's basically there. And then how much of an impact, I wanted to get a sense, how much of an impact did the broken fences that are broken, for example, like by criminals and gangsters, how much of an impact did the broken fences contribute to gang and drug-related activities at the schools? And could we possibly get a time frame as to when is the province likely to have at least one safety officer for each school? And what is the number of the school resource officers that were trained and deployed during the reporting period, Chair? I'll just have one more question and then I'm going to knock off. That's on slide number 5. It states there on the issue of teacher absenteeism. There's a point there in the 2018-2019 report, which we have noted also, which we have gone through last, the annual report. It was noted by the Auditor General that some discrepancies with regards to reported teacher absenteeism arose. And the AG noted basically some issues on his part with the reporting. I just wanted to know to what extent has this been addressed? Yeah, that was it from my side, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to latch on there, will we see a difference now? Will it be reported differently in the next annual report? That's based, I'm just latching onto what Member Syed asked. Member Mackenzie, I have noted you members. If you have raised your hand, I can see it. And when I lower your hand, it means that I have noted you. So I'm putting you on the list to be speaking next. So you don't need to repeatedly raise your hand. Member Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, slide number 8, slide number 11 and slide number 14. On the key risks, and I remember a side mentioned part of it, but under the key risk, we identify gang-related violence, community unrest, service delivery, and inefficient rail transport. The first question regarding to gang-related violence, as and the safety school section. We identified it during the quarters as a key risk, but what was the interventions? Is the department part of the local, working with the local cluster sections of the police? Are they working with the district coordination, or is a central command team where some of these risks can be addressed? Because it's easy to identify risk, but what are we doing working with the police in mitigating some of these risks? Now, we know what happens outside of the school property is not the ambit of the school, but obviously there has to be communication or some coordination going on, because we know that some kids in school belong to gangs, the gangs try to access schools, etc. And then on quarter 4, 2 of those risks disappeared, and which is unrest and service delivery. Now we know there's been unrest and the service delivery, so I'm trying to understand why did those risks disappear in quarter 4 if we've identified them as risk the previous 3 terms. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Mackenzie. Member Allen.
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't want to sound like a broken record, because Member Syed and Member Mackenzie raised the safety concerns, but to ask a more direct question regarding the Committee on School Safety. If I remember correctly, that committee is meeting on a monthly basis. I wanted to check if, for all the quarters that we're getting feedback on, if that committee has indeed met. Obviously, we understand that violence and crime in schools show the moral decay of our communities, and some of the matters are outside of the ambit of the Western Cape Education Department. But just to see the relationship between all the relevant entities on that committee, if I believe it's SAPS, Correctional Services, the City of Cape Town, the NPA, all of those, is that meeting still happening once a month? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to talk to slide 5, the learner absenteeism rate, and we see the increase quarter to quarter. I just want to check whether learners, what is the duration of absenteeism in terms of school days, and then in that percentage, is those learners who then not abscond, but that leave school entirely after a long absence, is that also taken up in that percentage? And then I want to say well done on the indicators that you have achieved as a department during during the quarters. I also want to check with the learner absenteeism rate that you are reporting on, your program Transform to Perform. What is the impact that has had on learner absenteeism? Thank you. Ms. Conrad, that is now the round of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to kick off, and then I'll give Ms. Conrad time to think and Mr. Eli time to get his budgets in line. I will direct some questions there as well, but thank you, Chair, first of all, for the appreciation of a fair degree of achievement. Whilst I remember in my review last year, and as you know, there's a fairly stringent review of HODs, the issue raised was, so your achievement of these outcomes are so low. Why is it? I mean, are you a useless HOD? Are you a useless department? And I think Ms. Conrad today pointed out that sometimes you are one out on the targets achieved, but you don't get credits when you've overachieved the targets. It's just achieved or unachieved. But there's not nuance in the evaluation, and we prefer to set targets that are attainable but also stretch. What we don't want to do is to set targets so that we can achieve it and look great. That's not how we push boundaries and how we achieve. So thank you for that acknowledgement. I don't think we are far off them, and I appreciate particularly also that insight. I'm going to start with Member Christian's questions about the particularly the challenges of societal problems. I think one of the things is that education can't resolve societal problems, and the whole of society approach to resolving it has to help education to achieve that. Education has got a far longer term role to play in improving education quality and the outputs of education that will maybe in 20 years' time have a better input on the educated individuals and the way in which societal unrest then happens. But the division in South Africa and the poverty in South Africa and the lack of economic growth and jobs is a very high contributing factor to this. And then the perpetuation of that because of the success, if you like, that gangs have and the economy that gangs bring is part of the challenge that seems to inhibit the resolution of those societal problems. And so the point that Member Christian made about typically in Mossel Bay, when there was societal unrest, half the school is absent, and that is exactly true. And so it's very difficult also to predict absentee rates. We predict that on trend analysis. And what we think may or may not then impact in the year ahead is very crystal ball gazing. We try to get as little absenteeism as possible. But when you then, as we did last year, have the unrest in Hermanus, for example, the entire Hermanus community was affected. The whole Horston, Hermanus, Greater Hermanus, Willeshle, those areas, Mount Pleasant, were affected for an extended period of time. Now that you can't predict that that's going to happen, and the impact on schooling there is then also quite a challenge. And in the Western Cape, the winter months, particularly the wetness of the winter months, more than the cold, but the wetness of the winter months definitely have an impact. We saw that in the last week when it was raining. I mean, even hungry kids, you know, less of them got to schools to collect food. So it is definitely a societal problem. One of the societal problems that is exacerbated is, for example, the terrible public transport. The fact that trains are still not running. I mean, education can't resolve that. But we've got many learners that are, if you like, learners from commuter schools, and that impacts on learners. So education ought to try its best to ensure quality education for every child, in every classroom, in every school in the province, so that parents don't feel they have to send their children miles and miles and miles for better quality education. We've got to make every school quality education. That's the challenge that we face, and that's what we're working tirelessly on. And of course, when things such as global pandemics strike, it inhibits that trajectory and that trend. And similarly, issues such as transform to perform, issues such as, I mean, it's put in many ways this year a spanner in the works of our attempts to ensure that we get our schools more functional. I mean, this kind of pandemic that we have now is inhibiting that space. I'm getting a bit of feedback. So the issue now, for example, of this pandemic, and it's now aiding the societal unrest, uneasiness, anxiety. And so now schools are back, for example, but there are many learners that aren't back. Parents are concerned, parents are afraid, some teachers are wanting to get back, some teachers don't want to get back. All of that plays on the reality of education's ability to deliver, the learner absenteeism and so forth, that will therefore make all of this year's, for example, targets way out of line. But thank you for that. I'm going to ask Wada Conrad to comment on the figures and the higher the numbers, as she referred to it. And I just want to say to Member Christians, the fact that the pass rate is consequently, the challenges that affect the pass rate are absolutely real. I mean, I've said all along, the achievement of the teachers and learners in Western Cape is still such a fantastic achievement given the social ills that this province has, and particularly the urban areas in this province in many ways, but also the rural areas in terms of poverty, in terms of alcoholism and so forth, in terms of violence. So all of that, the unrest, the breaks in school, the absenteeism, the scourge of drug usage that is decimating our youth, all of those factors play a very distinct role. Member Said's questions around the percentage of budget for safety. Ideally, education ought not to spend any money on safety. Education ought to spend the money on education. And the fact that we have, over a number of years now, created a small entity to work on school safety is twofold. One is to try to address the actual issues of making the school environment safe. And no school is totally protected from the reality of someone that wants to vandalize it, someone that wants to get in, and someone that wants to destroy, and someone that wants to steal from a school. It's not a fort. It's not able to protect that. But the percentage that we spend is about 0.14%, which is a small part, but you must remember the size of the budget. 80% or more to salaries, infrastructure costs are high. So the creation of the space within the school safety is a relatively small amount and a relatively small budget. Our impact is far more than what the budget says, because we do engage, a question also that was asked by Member Mackenzie, we do engage in the ProfJoc, and it's an ongoing meeting. We do continue with monthly meetings. In fact, the school safety grouping of the ProfJoc is chaired by a senior manager of education. We engage in that ProfJoc with all the other security policing entities, as well as community safety. And we work very closely with that. There is also work in local clusters. We expect in all our district directors are involved in the district structures, in the district JOCs, and in the district structure, and we are involved centrally as well. There are also schools that are more successful than others in maintaining peace and safety, and often that is a factor of the principal's personality and the principal's involvement in the community. Now, many of our principals don't live in the communities where they are principals of schools anymore. And that change has meant that it's a special effort that the principal has to engage to engage with the structures of the community, the enforcement of community. And we can't expect our teachers to do those things, but the role that principals play in visibility in the community is important. And this is where things such as the volunteer work of communities in protecting schools is so important, and something that we want to enhance as we go along. The creation of neighborhood watches, for example, which is done by community safety, not by schools, but is obviously quite key both with ourselves and with municipalities. The impact of broken fences is a challenge. It's the first sign or signal of the vulnerability of a school. And so very often, even a whole fence does not prevent a school to be safe. A small hole in a fence where a kid climbs through or kids climb through, and that's not an issue. But when fences are broken, as you know, the opportunity for even rival gangs, etc., to use an open piece of field that's a school ground as a warfare zone happens sometimes. It is sad. It's a societal sadness, but it is there. So the actual measurability of the broken fence is difficult to measure. There are schools with broken fences that aren't targeted, but it has an impact on the thinking, on the psyche of the people because of the vulnerability of the school. And we are, as you know, spending a lot of money on strengthening the kinds of fences that we put up. And in targeting it also over the next 5 years as part of enhancing school safety, a significant amount of money in erecting fences that are more secure. Then the question of the discrepancies of last year, I'm first going to leave to Warda to answer. I do notice that the Auditor General has representation in this meeting as well. If we say how we've addressed it, and if we've addressed it, I'm sure we'll go check up that in fact we have done so. Will we see a difference in the absenteeism? Well, I think Wanda Conrad has made the point that the increased absentee rate is because of the systems, and I'm talking about the electronic monitoring systems and the electronic registers that we've put in place, which probably now gives us more accurate absenteeism figures. Hence, I think the slightly larger number, and it's now hovering around the same general pattern, and it's not high on international standards. Surprisingly, in a sense, it's not high on international standards. And one would have thought that it would be given our socioeconomic factors, but it isn't. It does show you that education in the Western Cape has an impact, and we have to continue in working in that space. I'll also ask Wanda to speak about the two risks in the fourth term or fourth quarter, why that is not there. I've spoken a little bit about the risk factor and our involvement in dealing with those in the different clusters. I'm going to also allow Wanda to speak or ask her to speak on the impact of transform to perform. It's early days yet, but please allow me to hand over to Wanda if you would tackle the rest, please.
Thank you, SG. Yeah, as always, my SG is so phenomenal that there's really nothing much left for me to say or add. But to address the issue of the teacher absenteeism, the matter that was of concern to the Auditor General, there's technical issues that needs to be explained. We report against the information that comes off the national register, the national database. And we use that information as our reporting mechanism. The figures that sits there, that's our reporting figures. What happens along the value chain in a school is the teacher is absent, completes the relevant form, and that form can arrive at head office in a couple of ways. The first would be manually, they can deliver it. The other one where they scan it or they email it, and the other one is they upload it into an electronic holding system. That is where the AG found issues, not at school level, but and certainly not at national level, but in that holding system. There was a glitch in the system. That glitch has been corrected, and the glitch that they found was that there would be, let's call it for the sake of the argument, 10 items uploaded, and the system would on occasion show one or would on occasion show none. So the end official wouldn't be extracting that information necessarily. That has been corrected. So that, and whatever was missing in the last reporting here, we've already fixed it. But in terms of the system has already been sorted out. So there should be a seamless, and that is why you'll see that the figures are slightly increased, because the glitch in the system, it was a control that we put in place to improve our monitoring, actually. But systems need to be enhanced, and in this instance, the system has been enhanced to improve our monitoring. So it's not going to be reported any differently. What you will see is that the figure of 3%, there will be a difference. You know, you're going to end up with a 3.97, a 3.6. In these instances, because it's day by day by day, the accumulation of the days, it needs to be a heck of a lot of days that's accumulated for there to be even a 1% difference. It's a lot of days, absent days. And then just to give you some idea around that as well, in the learner absenteeism, the question was, are learners who leave school, is the duration of their absenteeism? It is included in that. The SG can give you the exact figure. I think it's No, I'm not even going to hazard a guess. I think the SG, if he can recall, can tell you exactly how many consistent days of absenteeism a learner needs to have taken. And then what happens is the school has to make contact with the parent or has to try and ascertain or find where the learner is to get the learner back into the school. And that also has actually improved. That system of trying to gather the learner back into the system has improved our learner retention rate. And you can see that in our 10 to 12 retention rate, which, as I'm sure you know, is the best in the country. Q4 risks, those particular risks were not relevant to the particular outcome. Remember the social unrest, the civil unrest that we were talking about happened particularly in Q2 and Q3, and it had a direct impact on that. So in the quarterly reporting, the things that have a direct impact at the time of that quarter, that will be included as a risk. Over the year, however, it balances out and you will have a global image in the annual report of what were the risks that you experienced across the entire year, as opposed to just particular risks that spiked in that quarter. So that's why you'll see that in Q4, the social unrest would not, those two disappeared, as you correctly pointed out. Impact of transform to perform, the SG is quite right. It's very difficult at this stage to say what the impact is, but what we can say is if you look at the kind of enthusiasm that learners have displayed, and I'm speaking in general, but I can give you specific examples, and you visited schools as well, you would have gone into schools and you'd have seen the mantra that's being displayed. The mantra has impacted on the learner's psyche, and what the reports that we are getting from principals, where they're having putting the mantra up and explaining what the mantra is, enter to learn, and the values conversations that's being had across not only the learners but with the teachers as well, and then the addition and creation of the Provincial Learner Forum, or the RCL at provincial level, and their involvement in taking those values conversations further, that all of those things enhances the learner self-efficacy. Added to that is the other pillar, the growth mindset pillar, which we have rolled out to 162 schools last year. This year, we should have rolled out 120 last year. This year, it should have been 160 schools. But we will continue. What we're doing is we're taking that onto an electronic platform. Schools have already indicated that they want to continue when schools open up again this year. Then the other thing is we've also last year, you'll see, and I don't have any research evidence of it, it's anecdotal, but in the districts who instituted growth mindset with their grade 12s, there was a stabilization of results, whereas in some of the other districts there was a slight decrease. And those the other districts have indicated now they've requested that we do grade 12 growth mindset specifically for the intake of grade 12s now. So they wouldn't ask for it if there wasn't a clear indication that it's having a positive impact. The reports are, if you combine transform to perform, which speaks to mindset and attitude, which speaks to belief, which speaks to I can accomplish despite. And each one of us, as we're sitting here, we all have a story to tell about our origins, our origin story, if you will. And that origin story you would have had someone in that origin story who saw something in you that ignited your self-belief. What we're trying to do with Transform to Perform is to have our entire system recognize the light in each of our children and help them see the light in themselves, and in that way have systemic impact. Because a child who can get that at this age, imagine the kind of adult that we would create. I can't give you exact figures on that at this stage because I don't have it. I don't have it at hand. I don't have it readily available as a research entity at this stage. Was there anything that I left out?
Thanks, Wada. Chair, may I just wrap up,
Sure,
if I may? Thank you, Wada. I think that was just. I'm just going to say there was a question from Member Said about how many resource officers we added this year. I'm not sure if one of my colleagues is able to give that, maybe Archie or Leon. If not, then we will make a note and come back to you on that figure. Not sure that we're able to answer that now. Archie or Leon, any of you have definitive information on that?
Actually, there's a difference. Every school should have a safety officer, which could be either the principal or a teacher. Your school resource officers, those are officials that's provided to us by the city of Cape Town, which they pay for. And normally they are deployed at our red zone schools. We can get the number and provide the standing committee with a number.
Thanks, Archie. Chair, then just also about the two disappearing risks in the fourth quarter. Remember, the fourth quarter is the first term of a year. And historically, that's not a year that is marked with protest just after the December holiday, and not a quarter that is marked with protest or service delivery protests usually. And so the guesstimate of potential risks is then not high. But remember, we also take a look at our risks on a regular basis. The EXCO is also the risk Enterprise Risk Management Committee. We meet separately to determine the risks on a regular basis, a monthly basis, or quarterly basis. And we adjust the risks, and we also check the mitigations of those risks. And it is all written up extensively, and we review those from time to time. A question that the chair also asked was the issue about the duration of the days of absenteeism. The aggregate days of absenteeism of a learner, I can't definitively say to you, is about 3 or 4 days. Ms. Conrad asked a comment also about if a learner is absent for 10 days or more, the regulations say, without any evidence or reason or contact for absenteeism, then they could be deemed to have absconded. Now, not many schools will do it as quickly as that, as the regulations, because we also all want to try to get learners back. But that is if it's just a no knowledge and the learner is gone for 10 days. Then theoretically, they can, after having written to the parent or guardian, be removed from the register. Then two last comments from my side before the next round, and that is that there was definitely an attempt in Eden Central Karoo to do the growth mindset for matric learners last year. And it is one of the districts which showed a good matric result increase, with our understanding that it is very limited time and you're doing it at the end point of the learner's development. It's not as if it was an establishment of a positive or growth mindset in those learners over time. But the anecdotal impact was visible, and there was certainly an attempt to try to do that for matrics now again, particularly with the mindsets and the fear and the anxieties which will exist in our learners now, matrics as well. They're very anxious about the end of year. They're very anxious about getting back into work. We've had countless cases where matrics say their future's on the line. They need to be able to get back. And also the anxieties of teachers are quite significant at this time. If I see the division in the social media about teachers' attitude towards going back to school, partly anxiety and fear, some saying we've got to get back, we miss the kids, we're worried about the education that's being missed out. It's not an easy thing that is currently underway, and we do believe that that can play a role. It's unfortunate that at this time, the global pandemic is almost putting a brake in the momentum that we'd gained around the Transform to Perform strategy, because for the first time in the history of this country, we've got a consolidated, systemic strategy that is dealing with attitude and mindset, the heart and the emotion part, which has been neglected. And I'm also very distressed that we, in fact, have a significant break in the drive and momentum to make our schools functional. If I take a look now at the response of schools to getting ready for the receipt of learners again after the lengthy break, those schools with a positive attitude and positive leadership got in, stuck in, addressed the issues, cleaned the schools, got ready, orientate people. At the same time, we have schools where that hasn't happened. We also have a few schools where there's been, I almost want to say, active undermining of that process and strategy. It's all about mindset. It's all about attitude. It's all about positivity. It's all about leadership. And it rather starkly illustrates the huge amount of work that has to be done in our system over the next number of years in getting that transformed to perform strategy understood and embraced, so that we can really build an education system in this province and in this country that will take us forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. I'm going to take a follow-ups if you have, and Member Mackenzie has SMS'd me here. Anybody else to follow up on the responses on your questions? Member Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. The response to my question, I'm not sure if I framed the question properly. When you identify a risk, for example, gang violence in our communities, what is the plan from the department, seeing that it's a valid and a huge risk in our communities, particularly on the Cape Flats, to work with a cluster police in the area from the safety school program, whether they do so on a monthly basis, on a bi-weekly basis? What is the plan in trying to work with the risk? Because I know they can't alleviate that risk because outside of school property is not their problem, but it is a massive risk in our community. So what is the plan? I didn't hear anything on that. Thank you.
Thank you. SG, I don't have any other follow-ups.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Lewis if he wants to respond to that initially, and then I'll take it on and attempt to respond.
Chair, members of the committee, our schools have been categorized in terms of safe schools, medium schools, and then what we call the schools in our red zones. Now, for schools in our red zones, we have committed security at those schools. It's either physical security in person, or when it is not too red, we supply the school with the necessary equipment, which include intercom system. We link the school to a response unit, and those schools are taken care of in that sense. Over and above your red schools, during school holidays, the red schools are extended to other areas, your medium areas, where we know normally in school holidays, schools get burglared and vandalized. We then, for the school holiday, for that duration, deploy security in person and that kind to those schools to assist with limiting the damage. Of course, in the prof joints where one of our chief directors are sitting, school safety and drugs and gangsterism at school is a standing item, and whatever challenges we have on the ground are lifted to that committee. I think they sit once a month, and where all the other safety agencies also have a seat, and those are discussed, and normally with docs and some assistance from the city of Cape Town. We then focus on those areas which we deem the assistance is needed.
Thanks, Mr. Lewis. I think we trying to say that there is an integrated plan and approach, Member Mackenzie. Are you asking specifically the plan with the cluster police? Every school is also linked directly to the station commander, but we also know that the police's ability or SAPS's ability to patrol every school and to safeguard every school it's not possible. However, the linkage is supposedly there. But still, the school will say it takes a long time sometimes for SAPS to support. So the link with school safety, the added security, the cross-joint engagement where we can pick up a phone, and our advocacy around local neighborhood watches and through the link with station commander in the context of the cluster police is important. But Chair, I would like to also invite Member Mackenzie where we may be misunderstanding it, and with any ideas, if he would like to take it offline with us, we'd gladly also take up maybe anywhere where we are missing a beat or missing a trick. I would invite that conversation, and also in that conversation, I'll bring in people that aren't in this meeting here now. That could answer more appropriately. Mr. Mayor, for example, who sits on the Prof Jock, will have far more ready and up-to-date responses for you. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis.
Can I just add one something else? You know, we normally encourage our schools where we have active neighborhood watches to provide a classroom at night for the neighborhood watch so that they can operate from the school, and in that way also have a physical presence during the night at our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, SG. That takes care of the follow-up questions then. Member Brinkhuis, I'm just checking with you. Is that also a follow-up? You are excused, Member Mackenzie.
Bye. I will take the conversation with SG offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Member Brinkhuis, you're not a follow-up. You're starting the next round, right?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to bring to the attention of the department and would like to ask them that if they could give me an update with regard to the Darling area. Darling is in the Swartland municipality. That how far the department is in securing a high school for the Darling community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Member Said, I note you.
Chair, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the responses. I think I've largely been covered on the safety issues. I want to say that, look, there's clearly a big role for communities to play, and for us as public reps to also consistently encourage our communities to play those roles in terms of basically securing our schools. I just wanted to, I've got a question regarding it's on slide number 5 still, regarding the schools that have been visited. I want to commend the department for the 100% visit to public schools. See, it indicates it's been 100% visit to public schools. But I wanted to get a sense as to the reason as to why only 21% of the private schools or independent schools have been visited. I do understand that they're independent, but given some of the issues we've been picking up at various independent schools and challenges, is there a reason as to why only 21% of those schools have been visited? Then, Chair, I wanted to also just ask a question around the positive COVID-19 cases of teachers that have been reported. if the department can maybe just explain what is the process that takes place once you've found positive cases at schools of teachers, just that. And then lastly, given that last week we were told that that the department is in the process of resolving some of the challenges regarding the sanitizing and disinfecting of the learner transport provided by the service providers. I just wanted to know basically what is the progress in that regard. Is there a full resolution to the issues now? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. SG, we know, and Member Sayed knows, and this committee knows, that in regard to COVID-19 questions or statements, it is handled by the ad hoc committee. So I'm putting that out there, and we know that Member Sayed needs to redirect in that direction, in the ad hoc direction. So I leave it to you to respond or not to respond. Then I want to ask,
Chair,
in terms, Member Sayed, I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chair, just on a quick point of order, Chair. Look, I do understand, and we know that that particular committee is meant to deal with issues of COVID, but I think some of the questions which I've raised around COVID in particular, I think does speak to some of the issues raised in the report. For example, my COVID issues relates to what we saw on slide 11. So it's not directly purely COVID related, but it falls within the context of the presentation, Chair. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
The context of the presentation is the quarterly reports that's behind us. So it's pre-COVID. Yeah.
But the quarterly report sets the tone for our way forward. But it's fine, Chair. I understand your point.
All right. Okay. SG, I just want to know, in terms of one of the risks that is highlighted in this report is the gang-related violence. Now, I just want to check, and it's not, you don't report on it, but I just want to ask the question, how many learners have we lost during this reporting period due to gang-related violence? Thanks. And that is the round of questions.
Thank you, Chair. Again, your latter question, I think we must note it. I will ask Ms. Brona-Hammond, who reports on these things, if her memory is able to reach that far. In the context, when you say learners lost, I take it you mean not out of school or drop out of school, you mean whose lives have been lost? I take it that's the meaning, Chair?
Yes, maybe I took lives lost, learner lives lost, due to gang-related violence.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, it's not learner lives lost in schools, but it's learner lives lost in gang-related violence, which is outside of schools.
Yes, due to SG. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll ask Brona in a minute if she has that figure. If I can just start with Member Brinkhuis's question on the Darling Swartland School area. I do note, Chair, that when we come to the standing committee engagements, there's normally an agenda, and we prepare to brief the committee and to respond to it. We do, of course, understand that the committee's got a wider overarching oversight role, but I would also hope that the committee then is aware of the fact that we might not have the detail at our fingertips. There's an assumption sometimes that we should be knowing everything, off by heart and be able to quote all the data. I do know that the committee understands that if we can't, we will give you updates on the issues that you ask. But it's not always all of the people that come along to these briefings that are working directly with it, and therefore it's sometimes unfair to expect some of us to have the responses when, if I'd known that was going to be asked, I would have brought the relevant official along that is able to ask easily. Now, so I can't give you.
SG,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm interrupting you. Yeah, maybe I had to redirect that. But for sure, if you don't have the answers now, because you are, as you are rightfully saying, you are presenting and you are responding to the presentation at hand, so that is understandable, and also rightfully so. If the question does not directly relate to the presentation at hand before us, then with all due respect, yes, you may then do it in writing because you don't have the response at hand right here, right now. So that is in order.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for that protection. I can do with some protection sometimes. In fact, I can do with some protection often. The conversation around the school in the Darling area is underway. There's not a definitive resolution in it yet, but there is a conversation around the high school in the Darling area. There's been some good progress that has been made in our understanding of it. But we also understand that when you take decisions around schools, communities get very excited and you create expectations in communities, when sometimes those conversations are still quite difficult and tough. So I can't in this engagement here give you the details. I don't have the details of the latest developments in it, but I can tell you that, as I think Member Brinkhuis will know, there are conversations around trying to do so and to get it onto our plans. I think one also knows that in the context of normality in our department, we have a 3-year rolling asset management plan or infrastructure plan. And those 3-year plans move out and move in depending on funding, depending on issues such as the availability of land, etc., priorities. And those planned and organized priorities are then sometimes thrown out because of demand for emergency school that is created because of a sudden influx of people in a particular place. So Darling is one of those that is high on the agenda for discussions, but I can't give you details here. Then a member, Syed, thank you. I want to refer to the slide on the independent school visits. And if you take a look, there's a target per quarter, 21, 22, 26. That adds up to just under 70% of independent schools that will then be visited in a year. And if those targets are met, that's not bad. It's not a little at all. And particularly when we break them down to quarterly targets, I think it must be recognized that there's then a cumulative effect in the end. But I also want to say that you're quite right, independent schools are not our primary objective, and we don't visit them because they are independent. The nature of the visit is to ensure that they still meet the requirements to be registered as an independent school. They're not supported in the way that we support public schools. Public schools have a far greater responsibility of ours. But so in the context of cumulative visits, that's 70%. Then I can just say that in the context of the sanitization of LTS transport, we did, as you correctly say, had meetings last week. And those meetings were resolved. The operators were satisfied. They were difficult meetings because, as we can understand, particularly smaller bus operators that have been stationary now for an extended time, didn't get income in that, as many other people had. And there were some challenges around, for example, the ability to buy diesel to transport. We had arrangements, we did get to agreements. In the context of sanitization, there are different voices in this space. And I do want to say it cannot be expected that the state sanitizes a contractor that contracts to do a service to the state. So from the beginning, I've been very clear that it's not the state that must provide sanitizers for the bus operators. Just like it's not the state that provides sanitizers for the taxis, for example, or for Golden Arrow buses. It's a private company that is contracted. I know that there have been messages across the country that says the Department of Transport must assist, etc. There is some support that is coming, but I don't believe that contractors must expect the state, when they are paid for a service, to ensure that they are able to meet the regulatory requirements that they're supposed to. However, I said from the beginning as well that I understand that if they then meet those regulatory requirements in the interest of our children, then there can be a cost implication for them, and therefore I had indicated that we would, in such an instance, therefore engage in the possibility of tariff adjustments within reason to enable the safety of learners. But contractors need to do that. There was also agreement on that. And I'm happy to say this is the context in which I believe we ought to do engagements and consultations so that we can resolve the matters. And so I'm very thankful for Mr. Saleh Abrams, Mr. Leon Eli and their teams in engaging with it. Brona, have you got an answer on the number of learners lost yet in the 3 quarters for gang-related violence? Brona or Archie, are you able to respond off the cuff, or shall we go try to find that information? Just give me a quick indication.
As you know, we'll try to get hold of the information.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. That's the problem you see in real meetings. I can make eye contact and send notes, etc. You know, in virtual meetings, I have to send SMSs and WhatsApp and stuff. It's a little bit more complicated, and I can't see. You know, I manage with body language, and and it's a little bit more tricky in virtual meetings. Just the last thing I then want to say, Chair, the question about dealing with COVID-19 positive cases in schools. One of the 14 guideline documents that we had sent to schools, they are also on our website, is a guideline L called WCD Guideline on the Managing of COVID-19 Cases in Schools. It's extensive, it's available. It was published on the 23rd of May, distributed to all schools. In that guideline doc, it speaks to the purpose, it speaks to the ongoing procedures and preparations, it speaks to action to be taken when a learner appears ill or displays symptoms associated with COVID-19. It speaks to the action to be taken when a case of COVID-19 is confirmed in a learner. It makes a very clear difference between what direct contact with a COVID-19 case and casual contact with COVID-19 case is. And this is very important because this is medical indication. A direct contact is the one that needs to isolate, and a direct contact is one who had been in physical contact, handshake, hugging, kissing, or inside 1.5 meters for an extended period, 15 minutes or more. Anything less than that is deemed casual contact. So if you're in the same room with a person, but not within 1.5, they're all wearing masks, etc., then that's casual contact with a possibility of infection remote. Now, it explains that in the documentation, and so far I've mentioned about learners. Paragraph 5 then speaks to actions to be taken when a learner has been exposed to a possible case of COVID-19, and then actions to be taken when a learner has been exposed to a confirmed case of COVID-19. There's a different operating processes. Paragraph 7 speaks to the action to be taken if a staff member is tested positive, teacher or non-teaching staff member tested positive, and it explains the process that it's in that case a sick leave instance. They get isolated if they are at school, and how you manage the space, etc. Testing, everything associated with that. A staff member was exposed to a possible or unconfirmed case of COVID-19. A staff member who was in contact with a confirmed case of COVID-19, and it makes the distinction between close direct contact or casual contact. And then paragraph 10 speaks to a staff member or a learner displays symptoms associated with COVID-19, and we talk about substitutes, management and monitoring of absenteeism, And if schools are closed, and a school in this province can only be closed by the head of department, only myself, no principal, no teacher, no district, no SGB can close a school. And there's a mechanism and a process by which where the reporting goes to get to me, for me to consult with the health officials and give a decision on the space. And there have been a number of those, both in closing temporarily or for sanitizing or decontaminating a school. So, Chair, that detail is available and it can be shared. If you want me to speak to greater detail, I can, but I'm not going to necessarily go into that space at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I can add information to Member Said's question. If he wants more detail on the why only 21% for independent schools. I think my SG was hitting on the right note there. Across the year, the intention was for quarter 1, 21%, quarter 2, 21%, quarter 3, 22%, and quarter 4, 26%. It should have taken them up to 90%. If one includes the 37% achievement in quarter 1, then they would actually have overachieved to the point of 124% achievement in that area. But they set those targets based on what they are able to achieve, given the rest of the activities that they're also involved with. And they do a pro-poor, if you will, weighting of those visits. So they also, part of their responsibility is also to inspect schools who are applying to be registered as well. So in and amongst all of that, they set these targets based on their capacity and the capability of achieving them and making sure that they're covering all of the at-risk schools, if you will. And then they're also, part of their responsibility as well is that they are expected to go and inspect and visit schools, illegal schools, if you will, fly-by-nights and so on, to make sure that those schools do get shut down if they are in contravention and unregistered. So despite all of that, if you look at the year's achievement, included to the quarter 2, if you will, quarter 1, they achieved 37%, taking them to 124%. So they've overachieved in terms of their visits, Member Said, but they set those targets on a quarterly for each quarter. Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Chair, you're still muted, Chair. You're still muted, Chair.
No.
Member Botha,
Yeah.
you can't hear you. We can't hear Member Botha. It shows me your mic is still muted.
Chair, maybe just move around and then we should be able to hear you if your connection improves.
Yeah.
Is there a deputy chair members that can manage in the interim?
I mean,
Wasima, can we ask IT to assist the chair with the connection?
Yeah, I'm in the process of asking them now.
can you not hear me?
We can hear you now, Chairperson.
I was not muted, I was unmuted, but I don't understand why reason you could hear me. For that, and I have chatted with you in the chat box, but I don't know whether you saw my messages.
It's nothing there, nothing there, Chair.
There's some he can can you still audible now?
Chair, you're breaking up quite badly, and then notes and questions in your chat box is only available to members. It wouldn't be available to the rest of us. To guests. The chat, Chair, the chat on the right is only available to your team members. It wouldn't be available to guests. So we can't see any conversation, written questions or written comments. And then as well, Chair, you're breaking up, so it's really difficult to get a clear sentence.
We are just checking with ICT and then we'll get back to you. Just 1 second.
So whilst we're waiting, can I just check quickly, Member Brinkhuis, are you clear? Your voice clear?
I'm clear.
Thank
member,
you.
Yes, I'm a member. Brinkhuis is clear.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think it's just the chair because Member Bosman was also clear.
I'm just checking.
Member Bosman, can you continue on behalf of the chair, please?
Yes, I can. I just wanted to ascertain, members, are there any follow-ups to the answers that were just given for that round of questions? Members, also please bear in mind that I can't see the hand raise function. So if you could just indicate either via the chat or if you could just let me know if you've got any follow-ups. Members, are there no follow-ups to that round?
No, Chairperson. There's no follow-up from my side, Member Christians.
I'm covered, Chairperson.
Thank you, Member Syed.
Chairperson Bosman, Member Brinkhuis here. I have no follow-ups. Thank you.
Okay.
Chairperson, I'm also covered. I've got no follow-ups. I think, yeah, the department responded to everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the SG and Ms. Conrad, Mr. Lewis for the presentation as well as the responses. That concludes the presentation part of the meeting. We'll now move into our admin and recommendations. Our colleagues from the department, you're welcome to leave us. We know you are very busy and working very long hours. So you deserve a cup of tea or something stronger.
Thank you, Member Bosman. We actually have a formal executive meeting that was supposed to start at 2, but we delayed it for your meeting. So we'll go straight into that in a minute. Thank you very much, members, also for the opportunity to engage and for the questions and for the engaging. All the best also to you and to your ongoing oversight role. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair and members. Have a good afternoon.
My colleagues will join Exco now, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair,
Goodbye.
thank you, members.
Thank you, members.
Member Bosman, can you hear me?
Yes, Member Botha, I can hear you. Welcome back. I'm so relieved to hear your voice.
I don't know what went wrong. Some gremlin.
Now I'm glad you're back, and I'm handing the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Member Bosman.
Chair, it's great to have you back.
Members, apologies.
Member
It was beyond my control. Yes, Member Brinkers.
It is fantastic to have you back.
Thank you very much. It was beyond my control, so I don't know what went wrong. So apologies for that, but I'm sure that IT will assist, and thank you for the assistance of Tafsir and Siraj. Members, in terms of our internal admin stuff, I just need to say to Member Said, especially I want to say to you that I was not dissing you at all. I was just sticking to what our rules of engagement are with regards to the ad hoc committee. And I trust that you have understood it as such. Members, continue.
No, Chair, thank you for that, Chair. Thank you for that input. No, I agree. And I understand as the Chair, you must also, in a sense, keep the meeting to the agenda and direct things. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you for understanding. With regards to recommendations, members, can I take your recommendations? I'm going to start with Member Christian.
Chair, I think the important thing is there's a couple of outstanding things that they said they'll come back to with I think Member Mackenzie spoke about the school resource officers that's sponsored by the city, but I think I would, from my side, and I know, we always speak about the safety at schools, and we know that education don't have a big budget and it's not their prime responsibility, but somehow we must get a plan, because we can't have the challenges put up, gang violence, and there's no mitigation. So I'm not saying there's no mitigation, but what I'm saying is, even if it's a collective effort with law enforcement, whoever, the school must give us a briefing, and they said there is somebody that sits on Prof joints to give us a briefing, because it cannot, if we identify it as a risk, we need to put mitigation in place so that our learners feel safer when they go to school. So I think that is a big red flag for me. And then the other red flag is, and the SD said it, we're not going to overcome it now, but pupils, learners that comes from areas that is 4 kilometers, 4.5 kilometers, and it rains and they do not come to school, or their service protests and they do not come to school, it affects them at the end of the day, because it doesn't take one day, it's a period of time. So I don't know, I just want us maybe to look at that risk factors, and maybe they must give us mitigation on all those risk factors. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, sure. Oh, thank you. Member Brunkhuis. Brunkhuis, recommendation from your side.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Can I delay my response a little bit? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you're breaking up again.
Member Said, I'm with you.
Chair, no, I'm covered by Member Christian's input and suggestion. I think he has covered me.
Thank you, Member Bosman.
I have no recommendations, Chair.
Thank you. Member Allen?
I am covered, Chairperson. Thank you.
Member back with you. Have you gathered your thoughts? Member Brancais?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm also I'm mostly covered, so it's fine. Thank you, Chair.
My one is outstanding with regards to our learners' lives lost due to gang-related violence. Then Wasima, I'm putting it back to you just to read back to us our recommendations, please.
Yeah, I just need also clarity on one of the recommendations as well. So I'm going to go through it and then I'm going to ask for clarity as I go along. So the one is the outstanding, the number of resource officers at schools at present. And I'm not sure if I should elaborate more on that recommendation to ask if there would be more resource officers assigned to schools in the province. I just need guidance from the committee on that part. And then secondly, the plan, the safety plan for schools. Now, the committee has it on the program. If the committee can remember, last year we had a meeting on safety at schools, and out of there came a recommendation to have all the role players that are part of the prof joints, as alluded by the SG during the meeting, and to have all those role players be part of a meeting, brief the committee on their inputs to the prof joints and what their roles they play with. Would you like me to move that up in the program so that the committee can have that presentation sooner? Secondly, thirdly is the Mr. Christians indicated learners that come that stay 4 kilometers from the school. And that service protesters that mitigate what is the mitigation on the risk factors, and that the department provide us with a plan to mitigate through that, because those learners are often not at school during service protests or if it rains. And then your one, Chair, the number of learners' lives lost, died. You need that. And then Member Brancais, during the presentation, the SG alluded that he doesn't have all the information about the school, but gave a few inputs of the new school in the Darling area is the other addition. Chair, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Did we cover you? And can we then, I would suggest that when we come back after constituency period, move that meeting up with regard to the joints with all role players. It will be still fresh after this meeting. So can we then move it up? And I think that will be where the 16th of July, Wasima? Am I correct?
I'm just double checking. It's the 14th of July.
The 14th of July. Members, are you in agreement with that? Member Christians, and that is especially in regard to your proposal.
Chair, I think that's excellent. Chairperson, I think that's excellent. I think that's very good. That the good whatever the new terminology is, that she brought it up because that was a hot topic, and I think it's very good if we bring it up closer and to the 14th. That is the one thing. The second thing, Chair, you know, when I spoke about the 4 kilometers and people don't qualify, I'm not saying that they should provide transport, but those learners that lose, you know, that work because of protests and that, you know, so is there maybe, you know, what is the word? Is there maybe electronical media or some way or some method that they get the work to the learners that they don't lose out? So I'm not saying that they must transport those people. I'm just looking at what is the mitigation. Do they get it on WhatsApp? Do they get it on Zoom? Do they get it on whatever in order to reach that children? So I'm not talking about just transport. I'm talking about, are they doing a concerted effort in those areas that happen quite frequently? I'm not talking about the sporadic cases that just jumps up. I'm talking about where it happens happens on a regular basis? Do they, are they are those learners? Do they have tablets or do they have cell phones where they get their work on? So I just want some innovation on that, Chair. So that is what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That the procedural officer goes back and put into wording what we are saying, and then before the recommendation are finalized, she sends it to us for input, just to say yay or nay or to amend.
I'll do so, Chair.
With regards to our unannounced oversight.
You're breaking up a little.
Yes. Oh, good. I don't understand. Can you hear me better? Are you hearing me better? No?
It's still breaking up. If you want to use the chat function, we can do it that way as well.
Okay. I'm typing as I'm talking.
Chair, we can hear you now, Chair. Continue, we can hear you now.
Unannounced. Okay. We have a bit of a, because I want us to do it in the morning, get there when the learners get to school, okay? To observe the whole procedure. And then to talk to the senior management team or the principal, look at the PPE that was delivered, look at they're showing us around how they are set in the classrooms and what is the social distancing that they are observing for learners on the grounds of the school as well as in a classroom. So in regard to that, we won't be able to do it on Tuesday afternoon, okay, in our normal time slot, because it might be that learners have left school by then. So we need to do it in the morning so that we can observe it. Now, the proposal is then for us to use the Wednesday morning, Wednesday the 10th. We start at the school, let's say that we are at the school 7:30, and we observe what I just indicated now, and then we move on to a next school and a next school. So it's 3 schools. So I will take an indication from you whether we go 1 high school, 2 primary schools, or 2 high schools and 1 primary school, because remember, it is the grade 12s and the grade 7s that have restarted. So I'm taking your input on that part first.
Chair, I'm happy with the proposal for us to do 2 high schools and 1 primary school.
Okay. Member Christians?
Chair, I'm still undecided. I think I think you're 100% right. Defeats the purpose if we don't do it in the morning. I'm just checking here. I see we have the ad hoc committee starting at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. So what we'll so we will most probably be done then and be able to do that meeting. If that is fine, then I support you 100%, and I think I support the idea. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, other members? Members Allen, Branke, Syed?
No, I think it's fine, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Now, yes, Member Allen.
So sorry, I just wanted to check regarding health. That's also sitting next week, the 10th. Would the procedural officer know if that meeting is going ahead?
That meeting has been cancelled, however, .P is sitting. But .P has moved their meeting to a later slot. So we're going to use the first slot. So hence I'm saying 7:30. We start at a school. We'll be finished by, should be finished by 11. And then, you know, the ad hoc committee can still continue its work in the afternoon.
I am happy with that. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. All right. All right. So we agree in terms of that. Now, members, with that said, I am proposing that we do some Mitchell's Plain schools, that we look at the procedural officer to guide us here. And also it will mean, in terms of us adhering to the social distancing, it would mean that all of us respectively get into our own cars and drive to our schools. Is that in order?
Chairperson, Member Christians, Member Christians, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's fine. I just, we must just check the schools, because I've just asked, I've done yesterday, we've checked to which schools opened and which not in Mitchell's Plain and other areas. So there are certain schools that did open and said, can you hear me, Chair? Because I hear.
Yes.
But there's certain schools that there's certain schools that opened, and certain schools that did not open, because of the confusion. Because the national minister and provincial minister and all of those type of things. So I think so by next week, all the schools will be back. Next week, Monday, is the latest that schools will go back. But I think we should maybe get a school that is that did not open, and maybe to see was there challenges. And then I know it's too far, but then I spoke to schools in Paarl where people did not get the necessary PPEs. So if the procedural officer can just maybe look at where the schools that did not get the PPEs and where the schools that did not open, and maybe one that opened successfully, and then we have a mixture. And like Member Bosman said, the two in high schools and one primary school, then we covered. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Wasima, we are putting that back to you in terms of a school that successfully opened without having many challenges, a school that has had and not prime yesterday, and then hello.
Hi. You're breaking up, Chi.
I profusely apologize for this. I don't know what is wrong. Wasima, can you come here?
Chair, I got Member Christian's guidance on what I should look at, and I will do that. And look at the 3 schools that we would visit. I would also further communicate with the rest of the members how times that we will meet at each school, how long we would be there, and what the protocols are for the schools that we are visiting, with the assistance of WCED guiding us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Danza, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, Chair. I think just from my side, I just want to check with the committee, because if you say the procedural officer must check, it might mean that the procedural officer may have to check with the department. I think the committee, and then I'm worried about the info, because the department might end up sending the committee where it wants to send them. Normally, you want the members to identify themselves, the school. Normally, members would have this information, but I get the sense that the members don't have this information and would require it from the department, because we would have to ask now the department, if you know, if the members now understand what I mean. But for oversight, for unannounced, we normally just, members out of their own, they just identify school and say, we want to go there.
Check now with members. Linky has got 152 registered grade 12 learners. Could that be a school we visit? And then also there is Oval North in the Mitchell area, and they have 131 registered. And then I, look at primary school also has high numbers, grade 7s. Members, you quiet.
Chairperson, you break up a lot, so it's very difficult to hear you. But I just see the one school that was reported that did not open yesterday was AZ Berman Primary School in Mitchells Plain. That did not open. So maybe that's a primary school that we can also visit, because remember, Chair, it's now only the grade 12s and grade 7s that's there. So I've chatted yesterday to Kuasadi, and they've got a perfect plan where people come in every second day and they only have 20 in a class. So there's those models that teachers really and principals really want to
school.
Say again?
A Kuasadia primary school.
No, but that's out in Gudut. No, that's a primary school, but that's out in Gudut. But I'm just saying, but I'm talking about AZ Berman in Mitchells Plain that did not open at all. And I know that there's a lot of schools that didn't open, but it's because of the confusion. But when if you phone the schools, they will tell you, like Paul, it's just too far. But Paul said to me yesterday, the school in Paul said that they didn't get any hand sanitizers. Other schools didn't get any masks. So that is so we can do our own little research.
The kind of stuff that we want to see. We want to see what's the PPE that has been delivered. Show it to us.
Yeah. So, Chair, we don't have to ask the department. If the procedure officer can phone 2-3 schools in Mitchells Plain, we fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Members, are you in favor of that proposal?
Yes, Chairperson. Can I suggest, just moving forward, that the committee empowers the chairperson and the procedural officer to identify the 3 schools that we're going to visit and send us the schedule? Because I am mindful of the fact that the meeting is going live on YouTube, so the department might be listening.
Yes, okay. All right. Members, can we go with that proposal then? And then we will communicate accordingly. With that said...
Yes, Chair, Member Barangay,
okay.
That proposal is fine. I think the decision must be left over to yourself, and then everybody can just work towards it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Then can I ask you if we can on Tuesday just have a short meeting just in terms of our rules of engagement and the protocols that we have to follow for Wednesday? About half an hour.
Should be fine, Chair. I think that should be fine.
Okay. Right.
Chair, can I just ask something? If you are, if you and the coordinator has finalized the schools, you will look at that criteria. So we won't. I know you know the criteria. So so we are also supportive of that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so very much. And for this, in terms of programming authority, what we got there is that we have to submit a project plan so that we will also then go through on Tuesday morning when we do our preparation for Wednesday's visit. Members, if you can hear me, and I trust that you can. With that said, I want to say thank you very much for your availability for this meeting today. I apologize once more for my technical glitches on my side, but I trust that I can clear it out with IT, and I wish also to thank IT for their assistance of making this Standing Committee on Education happen today. Wasima, thank you. Bendaza, thank you very much. This meeting then of the Standing Committee dated the 2nd of June 2020 is now adjourned. Thank you, members. Keep safe.